AMD is one of the most underrated technological semiconductor companies. Let's get into it. So, AMD stock, one of the biggest things that we've seen with this company is that they have always consistently uptrended. If we look on the 5 year, they've been on a consistent uptrend. Now, if we drop down to the 1 year, now that seems that they are validating this support here. Now, on the technical side, it looks like it's bouncing from what is that $140 price point, and we could see it potentially continue its upward direction here, staying true to pattern, right? Being at a support, right? Lower right here, and lower here, and lower here. And then we got this margin for profit of about 17%. If it only reaches back up to that 179 price point, if we see it break out maybe to previous resistance or higher, we're looking at what could be upwards of a 50% increase. So the technicals look interesting, and I'm really bullish on it. We entered a position, we're up in total, and then I switched my position from the main AMD stock over to AMDL right here. And this stock, we're down a little bit right there. You can see 286. It had gone down what was 2%, 2.89%. I was managing right around 2.5%, but I'm okay with where it is. I think that its overall direction is up. That margin for profit over on AMDL, which is directly correlated to AMD, but goes up by 2 percentage points every time AMD goes up by 1 percentage point, has a margin for profit of 50% at this lower price right here. That could be that next resistance that we see AMD hit. Now, aside from the technicals and seeing the MACD is looking a little oversold, like a good buy, that RSI is looking on the low end. But if we look over at some of the news that we've seen, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but we actually saw that AMD chips, so the AMD Versal, are powering the newest StarLink satellites. So as far as aerospace goes, we know that they've been involved with multiple aerospace companies, but what we see now is that they're powering the StarLink satellites. So that means that now there's a few more companies that are, outside of AMD, supporting companies like Apple or Google in different areas, and as well as Tesla. You also see that the SpaceX side of things, the aerospace side of things, is something that AMD is a part of as well, and that ties directly to companies like T-Mobile that provide the Starlink connection, as well as any other companies that are benefiting from the Starlink connection. But as you could see, they've seen an increase in their revenue, and their overall 5G networks, but also their satellites conductivity here is something that's going to be a big part of really the next generation of multiple Wi-Fi and connectivity journeys that we're going to see in this AI boom, in this technological space. So it's a big piece. I think that it's kind of a good indication that they're continuing to grow. Couple things that kind of played into that were a little discerning. You had some astronomers that were calling for a pause on the Starlink launches. Simply put, they're not saying that they are bad, but they're saying, hey, we need to do some more research to see the potentially long-term environmental harms of deploying tens of thousands of satellites. So that's a piece that we got to think about. There was a bill signed by Federal Communications Commission, which it's called federal. It's not that it is government. It's similar to you might look at something like the Federal Reserve, right? It is constructed to maybe preserve. In this case, it says Communications Commission. Not really sure what the whole purpose of that organization in general was, but it just seems that they have, like you look at the Federal Reserve, they were created to preserve the dollar and things like that, but and secure the dollar. But when you have Communications Commission, I'm not really 100% sure and up to date on what that is, but they have it says artificial satellites is what they said. Even the most invisible, the naked eye can obstruct astronomical observations that help detect asteroids and understand our place in the universe. There wasn't any clear indication that we had satellites actually, let's say, causing any harm back down to Earth, but they were saying that there is a potential for like if they're expendable satellites, we could see some of the burn up and some of the things that re-enter the atmosphere potentially. It says satellite. They say satellites could kill people, right? And that's something the Federal Aviation Administration said. So the FAA. So, but there wasn't any. I think that that's kind of like speculation. We haven't seen any of that happen as far as what I was able to find while researching. So but aside from that potential down the road thing that you could see with Starlink, AMD seeing a lot of growth with this new chip that they just launched. This was beginning of November. They had a good earnings call, right? So they were looking great on revenue. I think the difference and why people are looking at AMD, why people are considering Nvidia versus AMD, is what we've kind of seen. Is the reason why is because AMD is about 20% to 25% of their company is data centers, right? Whereas Nvidia is more like 80 to 90% data centers. And so what's going to be the number one key for growth if you own one of these companies and your goal is to impact or have a let's say a strong influence in the AI industry and the technological growth we've seen in AI, you're going to be looking to be in the data center realm. And so that's why NVIDIA, a lot of the AI companies are going with NVIDIA, but AMD is another option. They are making amazing microchips as well. I mean, as you can see, StarLink choosing AMD. And so, when you consider those things, you got to think, well, there's not going to be only one player. We also have AMD as a player. They're just majority of their revenue could come from things like gaming or computer sales or things like that. Whereas they're shifting now and they're making more data centers. But fundamentally, I thought overall they're looking pretty good. The pattern's looking nicely set up for a continuation up. RSI was looking oversold as well as the MACD. So that's why I want to share with you guys, let you guys know what I saw potential in this stock. Of course, there is some risk that we could continue down, and you have to weigh that risk, especially when we take a look at this trend line. If let's say we saw it get rejected right here, and we had this other trend line of kind of identifying a support, and you might say, oh, that's the bearish case that we could see, this kind of continuation down. It would be quite unlikely that you would see this continuation down because we're kind of in a very good direction for the semiconductor space. And I think there's if there's ever a time we're going to see AMD continue up as it has overall as a company, I think right now in this technological kind of boom that we're in, we would see it continue its upward direction. And overall, we'd be looking at something more along the lines of, of this pattern and kind of staying true to this pattern in its continuation. Or even, if you bring it back down like this, you could potentially, let's just call it, you can see that this is kind of this, you could see it sell off potentially. It's not the best drop, I understand, but you guys kind of get where I'm coming from here, that this is kind of a support that we're at. And we could see it continue its upward direction. So, there's a few ways to look at it technically. I think fundamentally, technically, and it's also below its fair value. It looks like a good buy for AMD. And so that's why I've invested That's why we're anticipating this move up, and that's why I'm sharing it with you guys today. For those of you guys that would like to watch me trade live at market open on Monday, I would encourage you to check out StockMate. It's that second link in the description, and I would love to see you there. If I earned your thumbs up, hit that like button, do consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.